Hi everyone. Let's wait for a minute or two to let more people to join, and then we will start. Hi everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today, Ext JS product demo. My name is Olga. I'm working as a sales engineer for Sencha. Normally I talk to EMEA customers. I'm based in Munich, Germany. And today we'll run a demo about Sencha's main product, Ext JS. I would like to make this webinar like less formal and more interactive. So anytime during webinar, you could submit questions in a questions panel, and from time to time, I will open this list and answer your questions. So let's start. If you will have questions after this webinar, please drop me an email, or you could follow me on Twitter and send a message there. So, Ext JS and Sencha. Sencha provides everything a developer needs to rapidly build data-intensive cross-platform enterprise web applications. So it's like our target area, building data-intensive cross-platform and complex enterprise web applications. So maybe if you would think about Ext JS and like if it's when it's applicable and when it's a great use case for using Ext JS, then I would say that complex enterprise web applications is a proper choice. Ext JS should not be used for like simple website. And Ext JS is a JavaScript framework, so it's completely front-end tool that allows you to build front ends for web applications. And how it works, like in general, internally. As I said, it's pure front-end technology, so it's using pure JavaScript, pure HTML, and CSS. But good thing about Ext JS is that to use it, you should not be an expert in HTML or CSS, for example. Because Ext JS will generate HTML and CSS for you. You will define your views, your application, your code using just JavaScript, and all HTML and CSS files will be generated. You could write pure HTML if you want, but it's not like mandatory. And you could also write CSS if you want. There is no restrictions. And before going into like demos, I would like to highlight key features of Ext JS, just to let you know that you should aware about these features, and maybe it's worth to check it or take a look on some parts of Sencha products. And if you would ask me what is like top one advantage of using Ext JS, I would say robust UI components. And I have been working as software developer, as front-end developer using Ext JS for many years, and it's always was like top one advantage why I always chose Ext JS for all my projects. And second advantage is data package. Ext JS is completely a backend agnostic tool, and it allows you to communicate with any backend, any server, using different formats like JSON, XML, or any less popular formats as well. It's completely cross-platform, and I will show you an example of this. It means that application developed using Ext JS could be easily opened and used on desktop devices and on mobile devices, for example. But it doesn't mean that your application should look exactly the same. You could define like differences in views. If you would like to have, like, for example, list view for on mobile device and grid view for desktop device. You have a lot of options how you would like to customize this difference. Or if you want to have differences in data into logic, it's also up to you. Or maybe just styling differences. Sencha Ext JS also provides architectural patterns that could simplify the source code of your web application, like splitting code between logical parts, view model, view controller. When you define how your application should look like in your views, what data it should use in view model, and what logic should be behind, like user actions when user click on button or something else will happen. What business logic should be performed. You define this logic into view controller. And by splitting this code between different like logical parts, your application architecture will become more clear and more scalable and maintainable. Sencha also provides you a set of tools that could simplify developers' life a lot and speed up your development process. I will talk about these tools, every tool a bit later, and it's also great for theming your application. We have several predefined themes, like for example, material design theme that is a new specification from Google for like web applications, how web applications should look like. Or you could use iOS theme for example, for when a user will open your application on iPhone, you could apply iOS theme, or you could use other themes, including some area themes that support accessibility. And we also provide access to all modern web features like progressive web applications or latest version of ECMAScript, except of ECMAScript classes. I will talk about this in a second. So it's like key points that I wanted to highlight. Now I will check questions, and if after questions I will go to demo how you could install and use Ext JS application. Okay, let me, sorry. There is no question, so I will switch to demo. Okay, If you would like to try Ext JS, most probably most of you have already done this, but just to start from like real start point and to explain the whole process, I will start with a trial. So you could click free trial, select Ext JS. You would need to fill this form and click download now. After this, you will receive an email. I just opened this email in my browser view. So you will receive the same email, and this email will include your credentials to get access to Ext JS repo, and also links to download all other tools. I just opened this email in browser and I replaced it username and password, so it's not a real one, but you will receive the same email with your data. If you didn't receive this email, please check your spam folder, and if there is nothing in spam folder, please contact me or contact sales in Ext JS and Sencha website, and we will check if something went wrong, and yeah, we will forward you this email. So there is credentials that you could use for npm repo to install software that will help you to build the Ext JS application, and there is also some additional links for some tools that will simplify your development process, and I will go through these tools later on, but now you just need to know that there is separate links that you could click and download this software. And one important point is that this link is only valid for 48 hours, so 2 days you need to download everything that you want to use from Ext JS package. And this trial includes full set of features that Ext JS includes, and it's available for a period of 30 days. If you, for some reasons, it's too short for you, please let us know and we could extend your trial for specific tools. So now we will install Ext JS generator tool and create our first Ext JS application. We could click this getting started guide. I have opened it already, and we get step-by-step tutorial how to do how to generate our first application. First pre-requirements, you need to install Node, NPM, and Java. And after this, you could log into private NPM repo. So Sencha provides all artifacts, like all NPM packages for Ext JS in this private repo. So I will just go to my terminal. I will make it a bit bigger, and we'll type this command line. So I need to enter my username. Username is what you will receive here, and it's equal to your email with only one exception. Instead of @ it will be 2 dots. So in my terminal, I'll open this, and in my terminal I write down my username and my password that you will receive in this email. Okay, I have successfully logged in, and now I could install my tool for generating the Ext JS application. And if you have, for some reasons, have issues with this process, with logging into private NPM repo or with installing this tool, please let us know. So I have installed it. and now I can generate my application. There is two options. I could generate application just like in automatic way, and then it will like standard name my app will be used, or I could generate application into interactive mode using I parameter. So I will use it in a second. We'll use second option, and it will ask me if I want to see defaults into package.json. No, I don't want to use defaults. I would like to define everything by myself, like I don't know, trial up, name of my application, and then I could select a template for my application, like a based application template that should be used for my. There is several predefined templates, and you could make a selection from a list, like prepared for you by Sencha, or you could create your own template. And for example, for your company, you could create like applications that will follow all best practices that you have like defined in your company, and you could just use this template to generate every new Ext JS application. So make selection from a list, and there are several options. I will use modern desktop. The thing is that we have two toolkits, classic toolkit and modern toolkit. And the reason for this is like historical, because back in the days we had two frameworks, Ext JS that was originally created in 2006, and Sencha Touch. Like Sencha Touch was a framework for developing mobile web applications. And then our customers ask us that, like, why should we learn two frameworks? And we would like to have be able to build application using only like one source code and cover desktop and mobile devices. And that's why we merged two frameworks into one, like Ext JS framework, and components that was originally came from original Ext JS was named as Classic Toolkit, and components from Sencha Touch was named Modern Toolkit. And at the beginning of this process, Classic Toolkit included more components than Modern Toolkit, but it's not really the case right now. And Classic, it's framework, it's not framework, sorry, it's toolkit that supports like legacy browsers, and Modern Toolkit, it's a toolkit that supports only modern browsers. If we will talk about like feature set, it's almost the same. There is still some small pieces that exist in Classic and doesn't exist in Modern, but we are closing this gap, gaps with every new release, and now this gaps is really small. Very specific features like config parameters is not available in Modern. And there is two exceptions. Right to left languages supported only by Classic Toolkit. So if you need to support Hebrew or Arabic, you need to use Classic Toolkit. And if you would like to have a full support of accessibility, like if your application should follow all accessibility guides, then you need to go for Classic. Otherwise, go for Modern if you don't have any specific reasons to use Classic. So I will use Modern and will generate my application based on Modern desktop template. I will name my, I will use default. Yep, this name of npm package trial app is okay, and the version description I will stay with default. You could always change these parameters into package.json file in the root folder of your application. So, and I will generate my application. As I said, anytime if you will want to ask specific question or would like to talk, if you would like me to talk about specific topic, please submit a question into questions panel. Okay, my application is generated into trial-app folder, so I could go there and run my application using npm start command. Npm start, it's like default command for npm to start application. So, and my app will be started and will be run at this port 1962. I don't want to use Firefox, sorry. I would like to use Chrome to show you everything. So, and that's my application. There is like two tabs. One includes just some text, and second one will includes grid. And there is some predefined features in the grid, and I could toggle my left panel. That's pretty much this, everything that is included into this default template, just to give you an idea of what could be used and how Ext JS application could look like and what functionality could be included. I just make it bigger. And let's open this application in Visual Studio Code. I will just open applications that I have just generated. Trial webinar. And we will take a look on the internal details and discuss them. So, first of all, standard package JSON file that describe any npm package, and our application is npm package itself. So there is script section that includes some comments. There is some other details related to npm, like dependencies, and we could see that dependencies is modern toolkit and material design theme, and like Ext core. So I will not go into details of these configurations. It's like standard npm config file. And we have another file called upper.json, and this is specific for Ext JS. It's configuration file for Ext JS application, so it's something specific for us. I will not go into all details of this file, but what you just need to know that I have used modern toolkit, and it's defined as like toolkit parameter, and I have used material theme, so it's defined into theme. If you would like to change this and use like maybe Triton theme, you could change it into upper.json file. And let's go to our application code, source code of our application, and it's located into app folder. I will try to make it also bigger, into app folder, and there is desktop and shared folder. I have created like a desktop only application, and that's why I have like build profile called that is called desktop. I might want to add like mobile profile later on if it will be necessary, and everything that is specific, all files that are specific for desktop view, located into desktop folder, and all files that will be specific for mobile view will be located into shared folder. So, and everything specific for mobile view will be located into modern, like mobile folder if I will define another build profile, and everything specific for desktop and mobile located into shared folder. So shared, it's for all build profiles, desktop for desktop build profile, and like if I would have another one, mobile build profile, it will be specific files. All source code located into source folder, and main entry point is app.js file. And okay, I don't want to use ESLint. Here there is something maybe new for you if you use just JavaScript and didn't use Ext JS before. Ext JS uses its own class system. So this class system was developed before JavaScript, ECMAScript 6 class system was introduced, and our class system is quite mature and includes a lot of features like mixins, config parameters, and so on. And to define a class, you need to use Ext-define like syntax. We are thinking about moving to ECMAScript 6 class system, and actually we have already started moving into this direction, but currently we use our own class system. So our application class extends standard Ext JS application class, and it has some properties and some methods. And let's have a look at main view of our application main view JS file. And it's also like Ext JS class that extends Ext container. Ext container, it's like container UI component in Ext JS. And there is two important configurations, controller and view model. As I said, when you use Ext JS, you split your code between different logical parts. Like this file is just a view. It defines how your application should look like. And if you would like to have some like logic behind your view, you would need to define this logic inside of controller. And your view should know what controller should like control this view. And view model is a way to define data that will be used by this view. So our main view uses layout fit, means that only one like main child, and this main child is central view, and all other children are docked like to left, top, bottom, or right. And you could see it here. So we have panel docked on left side, something is docked on bottom, and there is also a panel on the right side, like details panel. Okay. And yeah, in my view, I could tell that I would like to listen for specific event. And for example, on navigation view, I have navigation view, and I would like to listen on menu view selection change. So once user will select one or another item in the menu view, this method from controller will be called, and this method is defined in my controller, like here. And inside of main view model, there is like data that is used by my main view, and it includes some like data and stores. For example, stores contain menu items from my left menu, like text and personal. And every class, every view class could also have like SCSS class, and it's files that should contain CSS styles, like SAS styles, that is specific for main view. In this case, it's just a placeholder. You could put your styles just to show you how it should look like. And let's take a look at personal view. So we have personal view. It's also a class that extends Ext JS grid, and it has its own controller, its own view model, and it also has a reference to a store, and it defines several columns, like 3 columns, and it also has a listener that is defined into controller on item select. And this store that is referenced by a grid is defined in a separate file, like it tells that it's store, and it defines fields that should be used for data inside of the store, and there is predefined hard-coded data because it uses like memory proxy, and everything is all data is in browser memory, but you could just define Ajax proxy and specify URL and load your data from your server, and it will be connection between Ext JS application and your server. You just specify URL for a grid, for example, to load your data from server. And let's just try to change something, and yeah, something like this. And we will see that our application was reloaded automatically, and we could see that, yeah, my changes applied. Okay, how to build like a production version of your application. So this version is like development version, and I will show you that all files are loaded like one by one. I mean all Ext JS files. Okay, doesn't matter. Maybe I have changed something during when I showed you it. And you could see on the network tab, let me make it a bit bigger. And you could see that all files loaded one by one, like all files that was defined into your application source code and loaded one by one. Of course, it's nice for development because you could open source code of your file and maybe put debugger or check something, and it's useful for debugging, for developer to run application, to change something and check if something works correct or not. But if you would like to provide this application to end users, it would be nice to minimize this application. And to minimize it, we provide a specific command, and this command is defined into package.json, like inside of scripts, like build desktop production. So I will copy it and run this command. npm run, it's a way to run command from scripts array, scripts object, and production version of my application will be built for me. Let's wait a bit. Okay, and this production version will be saved into build folder, into production, and there is trial app. And that's folder that you need to copy to your production server or to, I don't know, Docker containers that includes your application. So this folder. And let's open this folder into browser. Like I will run just web server, and I will see. It's not ready. Okay, again. Let's make sure that application is running. Okay, it is. And now let's open a production version of our application that is located into build folders like build, production, and trial up. And now it's loaded much faster, and you could see, I will open it. You could see that there is JSON file and two CSS files that includes all styles for my application, and there is only one JS file, JavaScript file that includes source code of framework and source code of your application. So it's loaded into one minified JSON file. It's how you generate the production build of your application. Okay, what else I wanted to show you? I would like to show you other components. So here it's just a tab panel with menu and with a grid, and what else we could offer you. Actually, you could go to Sencha website, Ext JS examples, and there is several examples like sample applications and combination examples that include several components. But two most important examples, it's Kitchen Sink Modern and Kitchen Sink Classic. And these applications that include, these two applications includes all Ext JS components available. And you could take a look and see how components could be used and what options do you have. So there is all components, like inside of components, there is like smaller one like panel and toolbar and tabs, and there is several big one like grids, and you could see big data grid with all features like action column with a button and widget column with a small chart, and you could also have a row body and insert any component inside of this row body. Another option, just a second, sorry. You could also export this data into Excel, for example, and exported data can include styling. You could define styling for every column, how it should look like in Excel. So it's grid. What other? Flexible selection. We also support selection like in Excel, like flexible one, and you could, change it. And another component is calendar component. We have a calendar panel that includes like months, week, work week, and day view. And you could drag and drop different events. And you could specify rules if events could overlap or not. So, and you could create different calendars. Another component, pivot grid component. And this is like a pivot table in Excel that allows you to aggregate data per like different dimensions. In this example, it's data aggregated in rows per person and per company, and in columns per like year and country. But you could change this using configurator. You could let user to change this using configurator plugin, and for example, aggregate only per year, not per country, and only per company, not per person. And done. And data is recalculated. So it's possible to calculate data only on client, or just like provide a backend server that will aggregate your data if you have like huge amount of data. Another option is like tree visualizations, and there is different options like tree charts. Another one, organization chart, heat maps. something like this. And all this available out of box. Just as an example, to create this visualization in your application, you would need to just define config parameters. And config parameters includes like X type, it's like class name, base class from Ext JS for this visualization, D3 heat map, and then you need to specify store, like where to take data for this visualization and store. I have already shown you how store could be defined. Here we also have like auto-generated data, dummy data. In reality, you load data from your backend and just specify that you would like to visualize data from this URL, and you define like x-axis and y-axis parameter. And config platform config, it's just an option to like differentiate view of your component for like phone, in this case phone device, and desktop device. And you just need to specify like what field should be used for this access, and here just like config parameters, like styling parameters, that access should be on bottom and how to scale it. And the same for y-axis, also just field and some styling. And color axis, like what field should control color of this cell, and field should be defined like this. And that's basically everything that you need to create this visualization. You do not need to write like HTML code or CSS code or know details of D3.js or SVG. Everything will be generated. You just specify what fields in your data stream should control every specific like axis. For this case, it's X, Y, and color axis. And yeah, you may wonder like where to get all information about this config parameters, like y-axis, that it should be field or something else. And the answer is our documentation. We have a really nice documentation that define all config parameters, all methods, all events for every single component. And for example, let's take a look at our grid. And we can see like a basic grid, how to use it, that you need to define store, columns, and it's mandatory for a grid, and store should include some data, of course. And then how to define columns, what parameters you can specify, and what plugins, what additional plugins could be used, like how to define the widget inside of cell, and some like sorting, filtering. Our grid to support sorting and filtering out of box. And there is also some plugins like editable to make content in the grid editable. Okay, it's documentation. And what next I wanted to documentation, it's like API documentation with all parameters for all components. And we also have guides. And guides, it's like tutorials, like this open tooling guide, and you could also take a look at more advanced guides describing like class system, Ext JS class system, with all details like how to define different parameters and how to use like name convention, etc., and configure your class if you would like to define your own class. And for example, definition of architecture, I just mentioned it really fast, that it should be like a view controller and view model in your application. And you could find detailed guides on application architecture and view controllers and view models, and how to use data binding. Data binding is a way to bind data from your view model to like some parameters of your view. For example, you could bind piece of data in your view model to a title of a grid, or maybe you could bind like together data selected a row in your grid and data loaded into a form. So it's very convenient way when you have a grid and a form that should like show details of data selected in a grid. You could bind both components to the same piece of data into your view model, and it will allow you to implement this logic, like user click on a row in a grid and data details of your data is shown in a form. And to implement this logic, you would need to write like 2 or 3 lines of code. So you could find all this details, advanced guide. And I have shown you a way to generate application and use it using npm based tool. But we also have like Sencha command tools that was used before this npm based tool, and it's based on Java. And you could use it to generate your application. If you don't want to use npm and Node for some reasons, you could use Sencha command, and there is a guide how to generate application using Sencha command. Okay, I'm checking questions by the way, and there is no questions. If you would like to know something, please let me know. And in the meanwhile, I will show you Kabuki app. It's one of examples. It's like one of sample applications developed using Ext JS. And interesting thing about this app that is written only using JavaScript. It's Ext JS on frontend and it's Node.js on backend. And you could get source code of this application on GitHub, and it's publicly available. I will just show you. So it's this GitHub repo, and you could find the full source code of this application. And yeah, it's like sample application as employees directory. It has different tabs and it shows data in like grid. And on the first page, there is like 3 columns. And what I could show you, it's how you could adapt your application on user environment. For example, if I will make my screen smaller, at one moment it will be 2 columns instead of 1 column, and in some moment it will be only 1 column. So it's something that could be defined as responsive design, but in reality it's much more, because you could also define different logic for different devices. And there is a nice option in Chrome. You could change like device that will be used to display application. And for example, I would like to see how this application will look like on iPhone X. And I refresh this page and I load the same application, but you see by default it's like only 1 column. So the same application with completely the same data, but only 1 column. And if I will go to second tab, I have shown you that it was a grid on desktop version, but now I'm on mobile version, and there is a list. So all the same actions that was available in grid version, available in list version, like in mobile version, and I could even perform the same actions like edit or Skype. No, I don't want to Skype this person. So you could define different like display parameters for different versions of your application based on user environment. If application is opened from mobile device, you could show list view, and if it's opened from desktop device, you could show grid view. It's how you could define it. And as I mentioned before, Ext JS is not only like components or framework itself, but it also, but it also a set of tools that could simplify your development process and make it faster. We have a set of presets for Photoshop, Illustrator, and so on, other graphic design editors that you could share with your designers, and designer could use these presets to build UI for application, for Ext JS application. And these presets will include like grid, Ext JS grid, Ext JS calendar, and so on. And designers will build UI based on these presets, and then when you as developer will get this design, you will know that I need to use this grid, and you need to use this tree component, tree panel on the left side, for example, and so on. There is also another tool called Sencha Architects that allows you to build application using drag and drop, like just drag and drop different components on canvas and build your application. And I will show you. Just generate application from scratch, and we'll build something simple. New application is generated. I have like iPhone view, but I could define desktop view, and I just take components from a list. On the right side, I can filter for tab panel component, for example, and drag this tab panel on my canvas. Then I could change, for example, title for my first tab and name it first tab. And then I can filter grid component and drag it to like my first tab. And there is predefined data, but I could change it. For example, I could use grid builder and specify like JSON web service and define URL where to get data, and my grid will be generated, and data fields could be imported from this URL, and you could also change like headers for grid columns and so on. So it's a way to like use and build Ext JS application using Architect. And code that will be generated for you using this tool is follows all best practices, so you can make sure that you always have like best practice code. And it's also could be great tool for prototyping and for learning how to use the Ext JS. You could generate something using Architect and take a look on the code, how it's how it could be defined without using Architect. So next tool is IDE plugins. We have plugins for all favorite IDE like JetBrains, Eclipse, Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio. You could use these plugins and it will help you with developing the Ext JS application. It will provide code auto completion, code auto generation. Sencha Fiddle is a way to create a small code snippets, like to test some samples, like you could copy some samples from documentation and run it into Sencha Fiddle and check how it looked like. Sencha Simmer, it's a tool for simming your application. As I said, you have several predefined themes available out of box, but you could modify them and change fonts, colors, other parameters, sizes using Sencha Simmer. And it's also like UI tool where you just change config parameters in a panel and your theme will be generated for you. Even designer could use this tool to like theme Ext JS application. Sencha Inspector is a tool for debugging, and Sencha Test is a great tool that allows you to test your Ext JS applications. Write like unit tests as well as end-to-end tests. When you test your application as a whole, like you perform the same actions that user would perform normally by when user is normally working with your application. And last tools is Sencha command and this tool called XGen that I have used to generate application. I have already demoed this tool. So Ext JS is a complete framework. I have shown you just a couple of features, most popular features that I personally like, but there is much more. There is like responsive configs, layouts, advanced layouts when you position different components like child elements in a parent component in a specific way. We also support client-side routing. We support infinitive scrolling in a grid when you have like many millions of records, and I actually have examples that handles 2 million of records in a grid. And the trick is that not all records render it at the same time, but when user starts scrolling, new records will be rendered. And it's so smooth that user looks like he is scrolling through like 2 million records. And yeah, data package I already told you that allows you to define different constraints in your data, different dependencies like one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many associations, and handle data in sessions. And I also need to mention that Ext JS is our main framework, and we still think that Ext JS is the best framework for developing complex enterprise web applications. But we also provided a set of components, UI components for React and Angular. So Ext React provides a set of the same components that I have shown you for React application, and Ext Angular is the same set of components for React application. So how it looks like, you just export from Ext JS, Ext JS npm package components that you need, like you may export grid and panel, or only like container and buttons or whatever. You export components that you need and use in React application like you would use any other normal React views, React components, and the same applicable for Angular as well. And Sencha Simmer and Sencha test tools also available for Ext React and Ext Angular. There's links for Ext JS trial, for Ext React trial, and Ext Angular trial. And we also have Ext JS Community Edition. It's a free version of Ext JS, but there is some limitations related to full total income for a company that might use this free version, and also total number of developers. So please submit any questions that you have. Currently, there is no submitted questions. I hope, yeah, it was useful for you. Please tell me something if it was fine or not. I will make sure that everything listen till the end. And I just need to tell you that this webinar will be recurrent, and webinar is recorded, so you will get a link to this webinar. And yeah, next time it will be another webinar with more or less the same content. If you would like to let know your coworkers that are also interested into using Ext JS, they could attend the session next time, same day, same time next week. So thank you for having time to join me today. And if any time during your trial process you will have any question, please drop me an email or follow me on Twitter and send a message on Twitter. I will be happy to help you. Thank you, everyone, and yeah, see you next time, maybe at some Sencha events or other webinars.